Dear co-chairs, Senator Anwar and Representative McCarthy-Vahey, Vice Chairs Kushner, Marks, and Parker, Ranking Members Summers and Claritas-Dietrich, and other members of the Public Health Committee. I again appear before you in support of the aid in dying legislation. My brother Cliff died 2 years ago awaiting this law. In 1994, Cliff and our mother lived in San Francisco when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She was dead within a year. Cliff was responsible for her end-of-life care. In her final week, she was in extreme pain and doctors kept her completely sedated. She was drugged and never conscious. Our shared experience with her dying shaped our views on end-of-life decisions. 22 years later, Cliff was diagnosed with a rare cancer that does not have a cure. His cancer would spread slowly until one day it turned aggressive. Surgery was the only option and meant removing a large tumor and a margin of healthy tissue. Without surgery, he would have been dead within a year. The surgery removed the large tumor at the base of his spine and the right half of his pelvis. This would save his right leg. He knew going into surgery that he would become disabled. He lost all bladder and bowel control. A few years earlier, Cliff and I had hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim. Now he could barely stand and walk short distances with a walker. Cliff chose risking death and becoming disabled for the rest of his life to save his life. Cliff discharged after 9 months of hospitalization, complications, and nearly dying. The cancer was back. More surgery was not an option because of how much bone and tissue had been removed. Cliff knew that he had a half to several years of painful life left until the cancer became aggressive and killed him. As Cliff's end drew near, he had choices about how to die. He could have stockpiled drugs and self-administered a lethal overdose. I know he planned to end his life, but he developed a serious infection, was hospitalized, and then placed in a nursing home. Once in those settings, he lost the ability to decide how to end his life on his terms. Cliff entered the end-of-life care industry, just like our mother had. Some opponents of aid in dying say that we should focus instead on improving care for all, especially those who are disabled and dying. I could not agree more with doing more. However, doing more can coexist with aid in dying. They are not mutually exclusive. This is not an either-or scenario. Doing more includes terminally ill patients having the legal option of aid in dying. This legislation contains safeguards and gives terminally ill patients the right to make their own end-of-life decisions. It is compassionate, it is humane, it enhances autonomy. There were prior efforts to pass this law while Cliff lived with me from 2017 until 2021. We would follow the debates and ultimate failures that should have given him the legal option of dying.
Excuse me, Mr. Biniarz, your time is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. He died waiting. I ask that you enact Senate Bill 1076. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Biniarz. I see we have a question from Representative Foster. I'm sorry, too many things happening. Sorry, Jamie.
If I were a senator, I'd be in your spot. You got to be careful saying that. Thank you so much for testifying before us today. I know you did last year as well, and I know it's really hard to talk about the end of a loved one's life, even after some time has passed. You and several other constituents who live in this district have sent and testified before us in impassioned ways talking about family members' end of life. And I just would like to ask, because oftentimes this becomes sort of these parallel arguments, and without the opportunity in a public hearing for there to be discussion, we often will hear one side say one thing and another side say another thing, and we never have the opportunity to sort of cross between them. And so I'd like to ask, there will be people throughout the day who will say that that SB 1076 is the solution for people's end of life experiences, that if we make significant improvements in hospice and palliative care, that is adequate and changes the perspective of people's suffering at the end of their lives. So I'd like to ask you to tell me, in your experience, if you're comfortable with your mother and your brother's passing, if there was adequate management at the end of their life to assuage their suffering and their pain, and if you feel as though a change to that system would have changed the amount of dignity that they experienced in the end of their life. Is there an alternative?
Thank you, Representative Foster. Both my mother and my brother received palliative care. As my mother was not in hospice care, but my brother was, and I was with him when he signed the paperwork. And it's not something that he really wanted to do, but at that point, it was his only option. I would say that the care that he received was good care and treated his pain well. He at one point in his life had lived in Oregon, and that was one of the earlier states, if not the first state, that enacted such law. And he was a big supporter of it from the time he lived in Oregon until he moved to Connecticut. And I know that he wanted the option, and I never know for sure if he would have done this or not. That's his decision to make. As to improvements, I think, you know, the palliative care and hospice care that is given is good. Can improvements be made? I'm sure with many things. Like I said, we can do more. There's all sorts of things that we can improve on. Some of it is cost. This, you know, the healthcare system, end of life care drains many people's resources so that they have sort of gone through all of the money that they may have accumulated even during their lifetime. And I don't know, there's so much that can be done at the end of the life to ease pain and suffering, not just of the person who's dying, but also those around him or her.
I wholeheartedly appreciate your testimony. I know that these conversations are challenging to have, and you and the two other constituents who have championed this bill in district and shared your stories have made this public hearing more emotional for me to hear year after year, this now being the third time that I've done it, because I understand people's passion and I know how difficult it is for you to share this story. So thank you very much for being here and sharing.
Thank you.